Hey guys, it's Evan. I hurt my finger today, so I'm trying to get it situated. Yesterday, I've met two Sams. One at the library, older gentleman, says he's 74 years old, 73, 74. And another guy, I think he said he's 43. Could be confused, could be wrong. I'm not an ageist person, it doesn't matter to me, but And so yesterday I met a Sam, the young Sam, Samuel Reynolds, and oddly, I was, I went to the library. Yesterday was a different day for me. I couldn't really vlog because I don't have any memory on my iPhone, so I did my best while I was at the park to upload a video. And So then I went to Brookshire Brothers. I got my paperwork organized, like what I took with me, like my appointments, my VA appointments, confirmed my appointments, looked over my prescriptions, my wheelchair transport. I was doing my best to organize at least some of my medical care because I did my appointment with my new PCP, and that's like the intent and the goal is to organize my medical care finally after so many years. And Then after that, I went. There was police, Katy police all over the place yesterday. Today was fire departments all over the place today. I saw a weird Cypher. I don't even know what that is. Saw one weird black and red fire truck, like square box, and then I saw Engine 6 drive by. So another one in the neighborhood. Anyways, yesterday after going to the park and Brookshire Brothers. I went to the library when they opened at 1. There was a lady drinking a 40 out of a purse talking about mysticism, metaphysics. I don't know if she was trying to put mysticism with metaphysics, and I don't know if they even knew what they were trying to discuss, but she was on like this live chat just trying to discuss things. And all her business out there while she was drinking a 40 and hiding the 40 in a bag in front of the library lobby. I looked over some books. I always like to look over some of the books. And one of the books I saw, like top shelf, left corner, was laid out, and I have it somewhere here. Let's see if I can get it. So this book, I'm not gonna stay long because I need to take a nap. I've had two very very long days. I got stuff that's due. But this book right here, and so I I studied forensic DNA analysis on. I have a certificate. It's mostly based off of like the extraction of DNA, preservation of DNA, sending it off to lab. And if you're interested in that type of stuff, I highly recommend that course. But when I started doing like I really learned. I think my professor was great in that course, and I had some really great takeaways as to like where to start in the world looking for a job and where to start for myself to understand like that this is a strong skill in the world to have. And so many people think that it's just so easy as far as like lab work or research and analysis, and it's as easy as television makes it seem. And sadly, a lot of law enforcement systems, they are not skilled or trained to make these analyses. And even people in the highest like sterilized labs, they either don't have the, I don't want to say they don't have the authority, but it's not so much like their focus to really analyze the entire crime scene. Their focus is just to like process the evidence. And when you just like are in a lab setting, in a corporate setting, and you're just processing samples through a system, that's where it gets really tricky, because then law enforcement has to rely on somebody that their only sole job is just to process the DNA, and somebody that's a forensic analyst that extracts the DNA from certain portions of the crime scene. They actually can, from one simple drop or one simple sample, they can really create such an extensive timeline and really tell, like, factually what happened. And all it takes is one tiny, 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 tiny drop. Mind you, my own traumatic accident, I was in a pool of it, and I still don't know the reality. And even those agencies went through, like, they failed me. Those systems failed me. And that was like a huge puddle. I was covered and drenched in my own blood and in the pool of my own blood and spewing out my own blood. So I've learned, fast forward from that, going through this course, I learned that all it takes is one tiny, tiny droplet, one GTT, which is one drop of blood, can tell you the entire timeline. Like, the, I don't want to use the word trajectory, but just like the, and not, I don't want to say that it is the pattern of it, if it is just more the actual just sample itself. And by extracting it, which obviously I use I use peas in the in the lab. It wasn't like actual DNA, which I'm sure I can use like my own stuff. But I do advocate for things that I believe in, like I firmly believe in, and I think that gradually I'm getting into a place where like I can come to the Texas State Board of Forensics and say, hey, like, I admire and I appreciate that you guys have programs to assist veterans so that we can obtain careers and professions and help us in that way. But also, I do see that the way the board is set up is not aligning with modern day time. Like, the way and the rate at which crimes are committed, people are not thinking about the environment. And that is really what hangs people up. Not so much, I think that oftentimes it is the environment that sets free P, that people free, liberates people that are unjustly accused of crimes that they never committed. Because, like, ultimately the crime, like, the environment, it's like they say, if the laws could speak, that's really what it is to be an analyst, because you're you're like literally picking samples, and it can be samples off a wall. Like, the walls are talking to you, and they're telling you there's a piece of gunk here. There's a lead mineral trace. Like, there's like lead trace, so graphite, traces of fibers, traces of skin, whatever it may be, and you have to like very scrupulously not just collect but extract the DNA off of whatever it is. And I think that the way that the board is set up, the way the forensic state Texas is set up right now, is like it only allows people to work in a sterilized lab environment. And I think that that's weird. And I think that because of how my brain works, I don't think it's so much that it's weird, or it is weird, but I think it's awful, because we're in 2026 now. So all of these cold cases that have remained unsolved with tons of DNA that has never been properly processed due to lack of technology in those eras are just sitting on the back shelf. And with modern day technology, there's no reason for those to be. They can be easily looked at and processed. And honestly, it's like all of those cold cases should be processed and not processed with all of this propaganda, but just process them because the more DNA that's extracted and put into the system can help save millions of people's lives because it's almost like the country and the world is reliant on a system that lacks DNA. Like the more DNA that's put into this one system can help more than hinder. Like it can only help to have an overload of DNA into a system and an overload of profiles into a system when the issue is like, this stuff is just back there. But the standards for someone to, how do I say this? Like the standard for someone to be paid, like for me to be paid, I'd have to like get all these licenses, which is not the issue because I get help as a veteran. The issue is like the requirements after I get licensed is that I have to be in these certain types of settings and conditions, and I think that that's so wrong, and I think it's part of the systemic issue as far as like crimes and you know finding out who did what because I'll say as short as I possibly can say it, like one, I feel like often with these types of crimes, the perpetrators are not they're not considering the environment. Like they could care less time or place. They really can. As much as people say, well, a lot of these things are premeditated, planned out, set up. I don't really think that at all. I do not believe in coincidence, and I'm not saying like these people don't put time and effort. You know, I'm just saying that there is a series and a sequence of events that leads up, and it's like sometimes when these people that perpetrate, it is a form of complacency. So they have it like kind of just like set and done. It's like their way, they're going to get it, and that's it. So I feel that I'm going to be as brief as I can, but if you fast forward to after the crime's being committed, or after the crime's been committed, if you fast forward, you'll have the state or the city or the country hire through either their own funds or which is municipal, local, state, federal funds. They will either hire or the insurance company, which utilizes all these national taxpayer money, the insurance company will hire a hazmat or forensic cleanup crew. So what that crew or person will ultimately do is come in and clean up the crime scene. So my thing is if there's only training, because most of those companies they just require certain like hazmat training or handling biohazard training. But if there's like little to no requirement to be that forensic cleanup, then why are they? It's like a double standard. There's so many requirements for somebody to analyze and extract DNA and have it processed. And believe it or not, if it is somebody that independently wants to do this and be paid, there are so many fees associated with that. And so like ultimately, if I want to not I don't want to say freelance, but if I want to have my own career in what it is I've studied, then I have to get all this licensing under my belt, and after the licensing, I have to say like, yes, I've been given all of these credentials to do this job, even though I have the studies, and I have to make a commitment to the state that I will be working at said locations, said labs to do these jobs, and that's just it's horrible. Like, and especially like when you have like these forensic unit teams that come in and make these tents, and these are at like federal, local, state levels. But somebody that really is a dedicated person that dedicates themselves to forensic analysis, like genetic DNA analysis, when a system has them in this, like, in this realm of, in this assembly line or channel of, this is what you do, you process DNA. That's what makes everything super wishy-washy. And that's why so many people are falsely accused of crimes they did not do, because it's like these analysts, or these people that specialize, a lot of people that process DNA, they're not forensic in that analyst. And I know that sounds weird, but most people, they're not. They can be all different kinds of things. So these people are only solely processing what investigators give them, what cops give them, what law enforcement, what these entities give them. That is what they're processing. And if they're constantly processing from a certain portion of the crime scene, then they may get an overload of only one person's DNA. And then they're going to accuse this person of the crime because they have all this DNA from one person. And sadly, sometimes when these cases are botched and one person is pinned because they had more.
Jen wants to chat on WhatsApp. Download or chat as a guest. Expires soon. Don't share nickname to WhatsApp.com.
I have no idea who this is. I don't even have a WhatsApp. This is. Oh, my friend from church. But anyways, so there's this whole charity and organization, but I haven't. I'll make a video about that. But anyways, where I think it's wrong because why is it that forensic cleanup teams, hazmat teams, all these other teams, they're allowed to go out into the field and do whatever they want, and oftentimes these teams cause more harm than help. When a forensic analyst has to go through all of these like controlled standards of how to make a career for themselves, how to open up a business for themselves, how to work for the state, how to work for the government, or and it's not even work for the government, is it is solve these federal case level cases. Why is it that a forensic analyst has to be so like in a bubble? You know what I mean? And everybody else is doing whatever the crap they want in the field. And even the cleanup, so a cleanup company doesn't need much authorization or much knowledge to go in there and start cleaning stuff up. And they can go in there whenever they want, whenever they're authorized, which doesn't take much because here you have John Jacob Jingleheimer Schmidt saying, "Oh, I collected all the evidence. They can wash everything away." When the reality is if you have just one forensic analyst that knows what they're doing, one genetic DNA analyst in there that is in the crime scene and processes that fresh at the crime scene, like imagine just one person. Like if I were to go into a crime scene and I had my whole setup, like my whole rig, just like these forensic cleanup teams go in and have their whole rig. They have their chemicals, their suits, their vacuums. They're in there for hours cleaning up everything, brains off the wall. If I go into the crime scene and I have even the tiniest sample kits to go ahead and go in there and process the DNA, what, like, I don't understand. Like, that's like miracle water Like I don't get it. That's like in Space Jam when everybody's drinking that superpower out of that superpower bottle. Like the magic stuff. It really is like you're in there. You're processing everything real lifetime in there. Nobody's here just simply, you know, it's been forever like Sherlock Holmes textbook where everybody goes in there and nobody tamper with anything and collect it and send it. And that is a huge problem. And I think the furthest that they go, maybe because of the chemical sensitization or the chemical whatever, but even with luminol, even with that chemical reaction that takes place, a lot of these things, I don't want to say that they're time sensitive. It's not that they're time sensitive. It is that in that chemical reaction, you only have so much time to work with what you have. So, because I mean, time sensitive, the stuff is going to be there unless it's cleaned off. And honestly, I think that people mentally have like this, well, the DNA is washed away. It can be, that's just constantly harped in documentaries like crime documentaries. Like, well, it rained that day, so the body got washed up. It's not that easy. The I have learned in my course that you, if you really, really set your mind and observe that environment, will tell you exactly what to look for and what to process. And if you get into a really, really, really tough spot, the tiniest speck of pollen, believe it or not, can tell you so much. One speck of pollen can tell you the presence of a person. If another, how many people were in the environment, one speck of pollen can tell you the animals that are in that environment just from one tiny speck of pollen. It's unreal. And I thought that honestly, I thought that that was the most interesting part of my course, and also understanding the soil, understanding like at times when discarding a body, like it is human behavior to an extent, but also when, for one case, for Mr. Gregory's case, I did a little bit more deep research of the outlay of his parents' house. And there is a certain particular type of deterioration within the soil that would make it very easily to dig and hide a body. And a lot of times people don't think about these things. You know, I have been working a lot out in the yard, and being in Texas and dealing with this type of yard with all the humidity and moisture, it still takes quite a lot of effort, you know, even to tear up the grass. It's not as easy unless you have like some synthetic or artificial layout of grass, like rolling out grass, or something like that. Like even if you roll out natural grass, it's still, once that grass is laid out, it becomes pretty heavy. So there's still a lot of energy and effort that's placed into these things. And I thought that going through that course was cool. So, anyways, I really put a pause on that portion of my life, but I do use it in a way to help myself. And the way that I view that portion of my life is it a skill that has been acquired? Yes, but also I've learned that if I myself, I'm not putting this much pressure on me, but I just feel like if I can use my skills on myself, like be my own guinea pig, then it would be so much easier when I really start to, you know, charge for these services. And I think that I can make a way in that way, but it's just not really like top of my list. Like, can I sit here and email the Forensic State Board of Texas and say, hey guys, this is what I feel is super wrong? Like think about it. If I say just like think about it, think about what I'm saying here. Doesn't it make sense? Like to have a genetic DNA analysis team person that's on site in here, like real life time processing things, like why wait till it gets sent off into a lab and put into the system? And oftentimes the ins I don't want to say oftentimes, that sounds horrible. Well, I think that's where it gets super, super, super tricky. How do I say this? If that DNA is not in the system, and it depends on the type of crime as well. Like, what are we looking at here? Like, are we looking at somebody that just broke in and took off, or are we looking at somebody that really did commit like this high level crime? And then to top it off, what are we looking at here? Like, are we looking at, for instance, in like Jackson, somebody was attacked in front of a rental car. I'll leave it pretty G-rated. They were attacked in front of a rental car place, and it was just a homeless person. But then you can be looking at a couple months later, there was a law enforcement officer with his canine dog that was attacked, and so it's like, what level are we looking at here? Every life matters, yes. Everyone should be treated equally, yes. But it's also like, even though cookie cutter, these are two human beings, each case should be processed without any form of favoritism. That systemically is just never the case. I almost guarantee you will be having more people like fueled to figure out who, what, when, where, why, get all the details, how many, how much artillery how many cases were here at the scene of the law enforcement officers' injuries compared to the homeless guy that got injured. And I feel like, a lot of this is just real world problems, and a lot of these political issues put a stop to all of this innovation and progression that can very, very easily solve cases. It's just unreal. And I have learned in my class that all it really takes is one person. Like, all it really takes is one genetic DNA analyst to go in and start analyzing, and so much can be done. Like, I don't want to say in house, but yes, literally in the place or the environment where things took place. And in transport, in sending off this DNA, in even extracting it or collecting it, so much can be damaged, lost, tampered with. It's just unreal. And like, imagine just extracting that DNA and putting it into the system on the spot, and not having to wait for days, months, getting something to come back, you know, because with the type of technology that we have nowadays, instantly you can create a genetic, like a profile, just from the little things that are gathered there. So it may not be like spot on, but it's pretty near close. And having something to go off of is way better than having nothing at all. And that all that systemically right now is outdated. It takes so much time. So, anyways, at the top shelf, I found this book. And when I started my own, like, okay, now that I have this skill under my belt, like, what can I do to help me learn to have, like, a way to make money, to increase money for myself, use this skill to make money for myself, and where can I start? So, as a forensic analyst and extracting DNA, what is super, 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 super important that is often overlooked is writing up your reports, and also understanding that it's not so much being super critical of your own report as it is understanding that all forms of reports in this process are a form of evidence. And if anybody writes a report regarding the crime, that is considered a form of evidence. And it's often overlooked. Why? Because who knows why it's overlooked? I couldn't tell you. So I was like, okay, well, where are some places that I can start? I really started at first understanding communication, and I actually learned a lot historically about communication on the CIA webpage. And I learned about how the CIA communicated within the agency for so long. And I learned that modern day, that agency has been committed to ensure that everybody in worldly operations is not excluded from communication. Anybody from a nonverbal person to a blind person, a deaf person, any language barrier is removed. Like everybody has a way to express themselves, whether it's through art, whether it's through the profession, whether it's through any way. Like, and I thought that that was awesome. Like, have I been in an environment like that? Yes. You know, but an environment more that looked at it as skill, not so much as mm, as agency. Like, I feel like we all have a sense of agency, and because there are people that are very closed-minded individuals, very awful people. There's awful, evil people in this world. Those people, they thrive off of control, and because of wanting to have that limited expression of you have to conform and do things my way, that's where all the problems occur. But knowing that there is an entity that has done in a time where things were retro, outdated, and groovy, did everything that they could to communicate with each other and found creative, cool ways. I mean, I saw like one of the projects was like, I think a dragonfly, and so many little projects that gadgets that were created just so they can effectively communicate with each other better. And I thought that that was so cool. I was like, wow. Like, I mean, knowing and learning that there are people in this world that not just allow, but make it like a core value, a core, just a huge piece of you know their values that everyone deserves to be able to express themselves, to get things done, to be efficient in every way, shape, or form in life and in this world. I thought that that was super, super cool. So then I was like, okay, I started to learn about certain stories. Like, there's so much history if you just go to the website and inform yourself. And if you're not into like the similar interests that I have, that's fine. There's something on that website for everyone. There are military stories. There are, what else is there? There's short videos on certain experiences. There are videos on. There was one person who dedicated their lives to artwork. There are just so many cool videos there. So check it out. And then after that, I started to realize like, okay, you know, what is my style going to be like? How am I going to write my reports for analysis? And I was thinking about, well, the most notorious case in America is the one of the most notorious cases is the O.J. Simpson unsolved case. I should say unsolved cases is, I mean, to some solved, but to most it's like unsolved, and there's so many conspiracy theories. Is the O.J. Simpson case. So I started to look, like I googled it, and then I started to look at certain things, like here and there. I finally went to the
Jenny said, how have you been?
FBI library and I opened up the files. And some is redacted. I mean, the Epstein files are more redacted than the O.J. Simpson file. But I started to look at the one of the initial investigators. Like I started to look at his report, and I was just like, wow. Like I have seen other reports. Like I've seen some DOJ articles, publishings. What do they call them? The public, whatever. Off the top of my head, I can't think, but it's like a public announcement, something like that. And I've just seen so many, records. I mean, I've looked over so many federal laws. I've read them over and over and over again, appendix, amendments, and when I was looking at this report, I was just like, I'm sure there's some similar, but the way that this report and the investigative interviews and notes were written, I just found something that was just like, how do I explain this? Like I have never ever felt this way. Like, and I've read like when I picked up this book and I read. There's a way that I like to read books. Like I like to open up the front. I like to open up the back. There's a way that I like to just look at books before I'm like, okay, I don't really care so much about the author. I mean, do I have my own taste? Yes, but I don't know. It's books just have to call out to me, and I was like, when I saw these little things about this book, I was like, this looks super super tacky to me, and it sounds tacky. Everything just screamed tacky about this book. I have read a lot of things. I like to read. I love books. But when I read this report, and I've had my own reports, I've had lawyers write me like all these. I think at one point, this Paul Kelly dude and all the people from that law firm in my workplace injury, it was like over 200 pages that was sent to my HR. As to whether or not they got that, and I don't know because I call them, they don't answer me, whatever. They don't even answer the VA. So I called and I said, hey, like this psycho lawyer is saying they sent this paperwork to HR and it was like 300 papers from what I saw. And I'm like, and there's no response. You know what I mean? It's nuts. But, anyways, so I've read things, is what I'm saying. Like, I've read all types of formats of things, legal papers, who you name it, just dumb stuff, emails, whatever, books. And when I read this report for the first time, I was just like, I have never, ever, ever, ever felt like I was in somebody's mind. And I felt like I was in this person's mind. And I was like, that is so weird. Like, I wouldn't say that me and this person would have anything in common at all. And maybe that's what made it so easy for me to like slip into their mind. Because I think people that I have a lot in common, I feel like those just defenses are up. Like, I think that that's why I struggle so much with dynamic because the people that are super, super like, we can get along in so many ways and there's so many things in common, it's like this, and I just think it's like when you have this intellectual awareness of like your own capacity and you realize you're dealing with somebody of similar caliber, those defenses like instantly go up. And because you don't want to get hurt in an emotional way. But as like with like an acquaintance that I made recently, Sam today, like it's like he was talking and this was me, and I was like this, like I was able to like allow myself to explore this interaction, and not really have like such my wall up, because I'm like, hey, this is somebody that just wants genuine interaction for whatever reason, I'm over it, if you're gonna be cool people in the world towards me, fine. But if you're gonna be a weirdo creepo, I don't have any tolerance for that. Anyways, when I was reading this report, I was just like, I felt like I stepped in to their like my hand was in their hand writing this out. and I understood why they selected the style of writing that they wrote. I understood why they selected these particular words. I understood why, even though it's not ethical, they skipped over certain things in certain categories. I understood every reason with like it's like almost every keystroke, everything that was legibly written, everything that was like how do I say this? Like for instance, the shoes. Like the lead, as far as the lead was taken with the shoes, and the way the transition from like the shoes and you know talking to particular other law enforcement people, colleagues in the community, and asking them like what they think happened, like who do you think it was? It was just a a, a way for me to like feel that level of experience, but almost like hesitance in this reporting. And it was the hesitance that it wasn't hesitating to write, to investigate. That was not what was hesitating to do. What was hesitating to do, I think, because I don't know, but what was hesitating to do was from the tone that I got, from the dialogue that I got in the whole report, was having to have that sense of relax, that sense of like, let me put let me just put this down and think about who could have done this. And it was like almost like they couldn't do that. Like it wasn't that they had gotten to a point where they solved it and could stop. It was like almost knowing that within themselves, knowing there were so many other parts to what happened than people make are making it seem. And I feel that now, obviously, we know so much more with technology, visuals, photos, and I see now I have resolved my own trauma through reading these records. You know, this person was in the inner circle of the people that committed the crime. Like, was in the inner circle of Nicole Brown's friends, families, in the inner circle of law enforcement, and in the inner circle of O.J. Simpson and his inner circle. They were literally in the eye of the storm. And now, like, when you look at the photos and you look at how botched the crime scene was, like, this investigator was not writing, oh, the petty officers, were playing around with evidence, they were just walking all over the place with their shoes, that's not what they were doing. Like, one of the very first articles in the exhibits was the luxury shoes. So, I mean, they weren't talking about, you know, everybody else walking through the crime scene with their shoes, they were focused on OJ, where did these shoes come from? And I bring this up because I feel that for me, that was kind of a safe space for me. Is like, I have been through things in my life where you write Well, I've learned as of recent, the best form of writing is writing what you know. If you are writing anything other than what you know, you're already going to set yourself up for failure. A couple days ago, I was watching this interview with one of these great writers, and he said, you have to dress the part. When he was writing the headliners for The Nudist, he was naked. And when he was interviewing mobsters and, the mafia, he was dressing the part. And a lot of that isn't just so much because it's a giveaway, but the reality is like, what are you doing then? Like, what are you doing there? Because you're not going to get a genuine story. You're not, if what is the point of you being present if you're not present? And it's not to say, like, go and commit a crime to fit in with the mob, but he was always super transparent for what he was there for. One thing he wrote about when Frank Sinatra had a flu or a cold, he wrote Frank Sinatra with the cold is like Ferrari without what? Without fuel, something like that. Ferrari without who knows what he wrote. And it was just like, allegedly he got so much backlash. Like, Frank wouldn't even like really associate with him anymore. But apparently this guy, he is like the godfather of outer writing. And apparently they still call it something similar. Or when you write around the story, I think they still call it write around the story. So it's like when you write a story on one figure, but the story does not stop. Like, he wrote about the cold, but then he asked Frank Sinatra having a cold, but then he asked everybody around Frank, everybody in Frankie's inner circle, how they felt about him having a cold. How did Frank Sinatra having a cold impact them in their lives? And from the story just grew and grew and grew and grew and grows and grows and grows from there. And it keeps going and keeps going, and other stories come along. And I almost feel like that investigator, like, they didn't have maybe that skill, that trait, that insight. Maybe they did, and maybe they tapped into it. But I feel like they really did not know which way. I think their loyalty was a little bit was tainted. I think that this person was very highly conflicted internally because they were seeing a truth, and a truth to where systemically it would never get anywhere, and they knew that. And it's not that they didn't know it would get anywhere because they couldn't write out the report or the evidence or put it on paper, but because they understood, like, if this is already what has happened here, it's happened, it's been happening, right? And this guy has been doing other things. This is just got put out there and caught up out in the open, in the eye of the public. So I really, really liked how that report was written, and I kind of took pieces of that, and I started working on things in my own life, and it really, 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 really did help me. So, because I think that even though the true reality of who committed the crime may not have been laid out or spelled out in all those records and all that report, I think that this person knew that because of how things were set up in that time, they could not bring themselves to do that. But what they could do is write in such a way and in such a style where they knew that one day, in the greatest hopes, that somebody like me, which ended up happening, would look through these reports and understand their way of thinking and why they wrote things and skipped over things in a way that they did. Somebody who had to have cared enough because someone who didn't care at all had committed this crime. And it takes a certain mind to really understand, kind of like those. I don't want to say Jack and Jill went up the hill, but like Hansel and Gretel, kind of like this investigator left breadcrumbs. Why? Because that's what it was. Like Jack and Jill did go up the hill. Like Nicole Brown was Jill, and Jack was that one guy. Like they went up the hill. Like that's what it was. Pale water, everything. And this investigator understood that this was Jack and Jill he was looking at. There were no breadcrumbs left for him to follow. Was it everything laid out here? The glove, the shoes, the scene, you know, the wild goose chase, the Bronco, and everything else. All these police reports that failed this poor woman. And but I think that this person was someone who was never exposed to what we have nowadays. Now we have all of this psychological help. Now we have all of this mindfulness, yoga, stretching, coping. This is an investigator. This viewpoint and these records are from someone that they weren't really deeply troubled. Like they were a strong, driven investigator. And this guy didn't seem, whoever's writing this, they didn't seem like they were like so struck that they had to like go stretch it out, go ride it out, ride a bike or whatever. Like they were like, absorbing it all. And you can tell when they start asking people within the law enforcement community their thoughts. And there comes a point where he almost just like holds back, like so and so said this, and there's just certain little portions that were just kind of. It's not that they were completely left out of the story, but it was kind of like just holding back because it's almost like dumb. Like even though like these are people that should have a better comprehension of what is going on. This case, this crime is all over the world at this point. Everybody in California it's on their TV screens, it's on the radio, it's in every single tabloid, and outside it just was spreading like wildfire around the world. And you're asking a colleague, and this guy's just like jacking around. So it's almost like they weren't. It's not that they were not doing their job. It's just that a lot of it, I think that they have instinctually like followed their gut every step of the way. And you can tell in that writing that this person was not going off of what was there at the crime scene. They were not going based off of what O.J. Simpson said. They were not going based off of that interaction or even that communication with O.J. or with anybody else. Like this investigator was going solely, not even based off their own thoughts or their own writings. They were going based off of their gut, and they were committed to that 100%, to the point where they, in some way, protected themselves, thinking maybe one day somebody with the right mind is going to look at this and understand who did it, why they did it, and the method that it was done. Because I put it here, I might not have spelled it out for everybody, but I put it here. And I was just like, respect. I can respect that. And I think that there were some things where they were snagged up on, but I don't, I'm like, and some of these things like with the shoe, I'm like, it takes a specific type of person. Even those shoemakers at the time, those shoes were imported. So even these people, in America, these people, like, you have to think about it. They had J.C. Penney and all these Sears. I'm almost positive Payless may have been a thing at the time. And now there's so many different, like, now they have all these like athletic shops. That wasn't a thing. Like, these athletic, where you go in and buy these athletic shoes, it wasn't a thing back then. And so this quality shoe and this size shoe, I mean, can you sit here and like really say, okay, well, it has to be somebody that fits these shoes? Well, I would say the shoes, it's tough. It's really tough for me. I think because like I'm so deep into fashion and shoes, and I absolutely, absolutely love shoes, that you know you have to understand fashion, and not everyone, or the people that were even as wealthy as they were, a lot of those people, those types of shoes, uh, in that time frame, it has to be like, it would be somebody, like, even in the greatest of fashion, that was a very great era for fashion at the time. Those shoes, believe it or not, are still casual for being high end luxury shoes. And I know that sounds weird, but it's true. Like, for me, those shoes, as snazzy and jazzy as they are, and as luxe as they are, those type of shoes are still shoes that are mid loafer shoes. So like, those are shoes that you can still casually wear in the house. You can still casually wear to go to groceries, go to the bank, and come back. Those are not shoes like everybody makes them out to be, like these grandiose luxe shoes. You know, I don't see OJ wearing those shoes out there like that. These type of shoes, you know, mentally in his mind saying those are the shoes I want to wear out to red carpet events. You know, that's not this type of shoe. Even though everybody makes it out to seem like, even in Nicole Brown, you know, they scripted and they're like, she was saying I was the one who bought him those shoes. But it's like, I don't know if I really follow that narrative or that script as truth. Like, because she had such a great taste in fashion that I don't, and the way that there was just all of this tension and between like money and things like that, I don't see her like, do I see her like buying these shoes in the sense of like having another set of casual shoes for when they travel? Sure, but like, to make such a huss and like such a fuss about buying him these shoes, I don't think so. It'd be different if it was like maybe any other high end brand. Like, if it was a pair of men's Versace, if it was a pair of some other brand like that, then it'd be different. But I don't know. I still have a lot of digging with the shoe situation, but I did use AI to make a shoe, and I thought that that was pretty cool. But then it kind of did really help me understand like my sense of like, it's not about right or wrong, but having that notion of like, yeah, I know myself. And I mean, you have to think about how he even thought about using his cars. Like, he used the Bronco for a reason. At the time, was the Bronco an expensive car? And considered luxury, high end, huge? Yes. But he had so many other cars he could have used, faster cars, to get away in. But he chose the Bronco. That makes me think about me. I'm the type of person that, the same way I pick out my toothbrush, the same way I look at toothbrush to buy a toothbrush. I really, it's not that I'm meticulous, but I really think about, like, is this worth the price? Is it going to do what I need it to do effectively? And I'm the same way with my clothes. I'm the exact same way with my clothes. I'm the exact same way with my shoes. I'm the exact, like, all of these things going to fulfill its purpose. You know, like, I'll wear my rain boots when I know that I'm going to be a little bit wet, a little bit damp, or it's rainy. I'll wear my my boots. Certain that is how, especially when your life is always in the spotlight, when you constantly have cameras around and stuff like that, you are going to wear the appropriate shoes for the occasion. And the fact that these shoes were just put into the spotlight, they were so high end luxe. To most people, yes, they're high end luxe. Most people would never even think about spending as much money as they spent on these shoes. But also, it's almost like this brand was not a brand in that time frame that everybody was just like name dropping. Not everybody was name dropping these Brunos. I think that's what they were, the Bruno Maglis. Not everybody was name dropping this brand. And most people know, like, I don't know how big Tom Ford was just quite yet in that time, but most people were like with Gucci, with Dolce, with Chanel, with all these other brands. And I think Guess and Gap and all of that was still not really too deep in. So once I really understood, like, I learned, I guess, through that situation of reading through the notes, I started to, like, kind of get into my style of where I want to go in my life as far as, like, how to get to where I want to get. So I could relate with how, this alleged dossier here in the front and in the back of this book slightly. They kind of somewhat, if you squint your eyes, resemble the OJ records, but not really. And I think that, I don't know, like, the book, this book, Underbelly of the Golden Gasket, it is tacky. Like, sadly, like, I haven't read it entirely, but I've jumped around spots. I've looked at the pictures, and so I looked at some of the pictures, and it is tacky. Like, it's called Underbelly: The Golden Casket, and it's by John Sylvester and Andrew Wu. But I think it's tacky because of the time. Like, these people, John Sylvester was a crime reporter in Melbourne since 1978. And the thing about it is, like, these people, like, you gotta think about, in 1978, tabloids and things like that were like, mm, I don't know, kind of like a thing, and it's not so much a thing now. Like, now we watch YouTube videos. I'm on YouTube. We make shorts. We make reels. We make these. Like, I'm making a vlog, and so this is super tacky. Everything about this is tacky, and I think it's meant to be tacky for the simple fact that, like, to people like this guy, a crime reporter. Okay, I'm not saying, like, he's not this whatever experienced crime reporter, but I don't know this guy's life. But I think that when you exaggerate, now that I have an idea of the real story, and I've seen a couple other interviews online and articles, modern day articles, not like when this book was written. But I don't know much about the writer other than a couple of the pages that's here. You know, most pages, most books either like here on this portion or towards the end, or even on the back of the book, most books have like a bio of the author. I don't know. This one just says, you know, it has the authors in the beginning, and it doesn't really say much about the author. Like it says the ABC documentary, you know, co-hosted this, senior crime reporter for The Age, and he is described as spooky, eccentric by people who do not know him. It's just, you know, I don't know. But my thing about this, it says John Sylvester and Andrew Wu, contributing author Colin McLaren, Sly Inc. I don't think I've seen many Sly Inc. publishing books. I think they do kind of like these types of books, but I think I've maybe only ever seen one, to be honest with you. And there is one brand of books. I've only ever seen one other brand of books like this. And they were like these small, probably like a little bit shorter than this type of book, like a little bit smaller than this. And it was like a series of urban city fiction. So it was like deep urban city fiction books. Other than that, I've never seen a publisher like this, and this is based on a true story. So I kind of came to the understanding and conclusion. Maybe I'll look into the author a little bit more, but I can already tell you I'm not going to like the guy because of all of the research that I've been doing in writing as of lately. You know, that's why you should write what you know. And if you don't know about it, you shouldn't. If you don't, if you know, a crime reporter, like if you don't know about it, Miss Brenda, she was awful, but she taught me one thing. She said, "Don't talk about it, be about it." And I think that I can apply the same logic to writing. Like, you know, don't write about it, be about it. And one of the lessons, like that guy about the Frank Sinatra story, he shared that, you know, he was about it. It was not an easy thing to dress up in the same attire as the other mobsters. It doesn't mean he was out there doing, you know, mob like things, but he had to dress the part so he can openly and transparently say, like, I am a writer, I want to write a story on you and be a part, blend in to the crowd to get the story. And when he wrote The Scoop on the Nudist, you know, he was naked writing about the nudist. So I started really thinking about the title of this book and how this book really portrayed Carl Williams, which is who the book is about. This is just, you know, this picture is really from his funeral happened in real life. But you know, like even the cover art, like I would never do this type of cover art. Like I would never do this type, you know, and how they made it look like so dark and you know highlight the casket. See, I think because the way I haven't gotten through the entire story. Like, have I seen bits and pieces? But I haven't really just sat down and been with the story for enough time. But I'm the type of person that I I like to relate to certain things so that I can get through certain problems in my life, like certain stories. And I started off the bat like when I was like, man, this book is super super tacky, but I think there's more to it, so I'm gonna get it, and I got it. And then I looked up on Google, like I googled the guy, and then I googled the guy that committed the violence towards him, try to keep it G-rated, and well, I googled Carl Williams, and I was like, wow, there's like unreal amounts of articles about this man. Like, this must be huger than what this book makes it out to be. And then I was like, okay, well, it's just a hunch, that this story is huger than what the book makes it. So then I googled the person that committed the act of violence towards him, and there wasn't as many articles as obviously on Carl Williams, but there were still articles and videos. And then I think I like googled again, and I was like, okay, let me start going through some of these videos. And oddly, one of the videos that had the greatest hits, intertwined with all of these stories in between, was a story about a old lady. I won't go too much into her, but she's an old lady who was the mother of certain individuals that were heavily involved in crime. No one related to Carl Williams, but still involved in that same like uh, criminal ring of things, just separate. And then I was like, interesting, how that all kind of ties into Carl Williams eventually. So then I went to another video which was about Carl Williams on Facebook. So the first two real like heavy traffic videos were Facebook videos. Then I went to YouTube and I started watching the diaries. And I watched a couple of the diaries. A lot of the diaries are censored by YouTube for whatever reason. And I can tell that people repost the documentary, the biography, whatever you want to call it. So then after I did that, at that point, and at this point really, I was like, man, no wonder I thought the book is tacky, because it is tacky, you know. And I think that my truth and my reality is just like Carl's reality, to everybody on the outside looking into Carl's life. He's like this. He's just, how do I describe him? I'm trying to describe him without, like, with eliminating how I feel, but really stick to, like, how he is, you know. Because when you get to the truth, I think you'll understand why it's so hard for me, because his truth is written across so many spectrums. The media went on a frenzy about his life. There's even a docu series like called Underbelly. It's called Underbelly, and there are just so many spin-offs on his life. If you stick to how that criminal organization thought about him, it doesn't just stop there. Like, he was very highly respected in this criminal organization. So in this organization, he was somebody who got the job done. He worked and worked and worked, and he did not stop. And not only did he work, but he was great at what he did. He was great at talking to people. He was great at dealing with people, and he was a great person. That is why, I think that people in that world, came to him. So not only was it people in this criminal enterprise that found him reliable, but to the point where the law enforcement found him reliable. Like, and when you think about it, the reality is that people at the highest, I think there were two, was it deputies? Well, there's a lot of slang terms when they talk about cops in this. I don't really know their ranks, but I know that they were two heavy, important people, and I think they only interviewed one investigator, and that one investigator called Carl a coward. But I think that's different. Like, I think and I know it sounds weird, but I think he calls Carl a coward in a different context. I think he calls him a coward because to be black and white, like if you're straight, narrow, ethical, you've never been a victim of crime your entire life, you know, and you just you've always had a silver spoon in your mouth, and your job is you're a big wig, and your job is to put away the bad guys, and that's all you know the rest of your life. Well, of course, you're going to view Carl as a coward, because he committed a crime that makes him a coward in your book. So, you know, that's a whole different can of worms. But later on, and it's weird that the same guy that calls Carl a coward, the same investigator who called Carl a coward, later on he goes on to say, you know, this is who Carl was. And if I had Carl within my own arm's reach and he was my witness to and my connection to that family, I would have never let him out of my sight. I would have never allowed him to be in a place of such danger. I would have never allowed him to be in a vulnerable place to where something bad would have happened to him. He says, I would have had him wrapped around in, what did he say? In cotton, in a cotton, what did he say? Like in a cotton cloth or something like that. Like he's basically saying in so many words that he basically would have protected Carl, and that he probably didn't want to say it, but like very, boldly, because he puts guys like Carl away, guys that commit crimes. He locks them up. But he knows, as much as it burns him up inside to say it, he knows how vital Carl's role is in that world, in that system. He knows that without Carl, there is no way to, like, without Carl, there is no way to get through to that large, powerful family. Like, everybody in the federal system, everybody in that country, as far as like a legal agency or entity, they absolutely need Carl so that they can get to this family, so that they can make this powerful, controlling family, you know, you know, uh, so they can hold them accountable for all of the crimes that they're committing on such an immense scale. This family is large. They are operating this huge criminal enterprise. And I haven't gone so deep into Carl's childhood, but from what I have seen so far, what I found was super odd was that Carl, by blood, is not related to anybody in that criminal enterprise. And there was another thing that caught my eye was not only is he not related but to anyone, not related to anyone by blood, but he is not related to anybody by a relationship. So he has never had any form of relationship with anybody in that criminal enterprise. And what I found super weird was that somebody in that family actually violated somebody that Carl was with. I can't remember who it was, but they actually preyed on one of Carl's wives, girlfriends, whoever it was. They actually preyed on her. And so I was like, to me, that's like super fascinating because that almost cements, like that almost is almost like just the proof that, like I put it, Carl didn't choose the life, it chose him. I didn't choose the life, it chose me. It's almost proof that Carl has always told the truth. Carl told the truth, and this is why I'm saying, like, I haven't done much delving into his childhood or his upbringing because I still don't know, and I don't even think the book has it. Like, from what I've seen, doesn't do a job of that. From what I've seen online and in the diary journal, the diary journal doesn't go into his childhood either. So a lot of people still don't have his childhood really put together, pieced together. A lot of people don't even know how he got involved in all of this, like working with this criminal enterprise, this huge, powerful family. And I think that it just validates Carl's story. Like, Carl's has always told the story of, like, this was the life that he lived, the life that he knew, and that at some point in his life, in that ecosystem, in that upbringing, there were people in that community that were trying to plot to hurt him and harm him for whatever reason. And Carl ended up taking action on his own, which he should have never done. But he ended up, how do I say this? I'll get to that point in a minute, like where I feel I have a theory on that. But so, in a way, he conformed to survive, and he adapted. I'll say he adapted. He didn't conform, but he adapted to survive. He adapted for himself, for the woman that he loved, who had kids. He adapted later on, and had he not adapted, he probably would have cheated himself out of the opportunity of being a dad because he ultimately had a daughter, and and once he had a daughter, he became super super defensive. He was like, "There's no way in HE double hockey sticks I'm gonna let you threaten me or my family," you know. And Carl wins every time those battles. But what I'm getting at is, I have a theory that this community and his upbringing, that's all he ever knew and all he ever tried to get himself out of. He really fought to get himself out of that horrible life. And, I feel like he didn't want that life at all, but he didn't see any other way. Like, that is his community. His community is so corrupt. And even the people that are lavish, living it up, they're all dealing. Even this family is the wealthiest family in the whole country. This family, so that's what he was like. Well, crap. Like, if I'm in the slums, I'm doing the same thing. So why live in the slums and in fear of my life when I can be doing the same thing and be wealthy? Why struggle? Why suffer when I can prosper, when I can be set for life? So I feel like that's one of my theories, that the the life and so many other cultures have this. It's not just his culture, his environment in Australia. Like, there historically has always been in New York this mob, mafioso, little corner, little Italy, even little Chinatown, where these mobs come in and they say, you know, we're going to charge you this much a month for our protection. You have no choice. And that is kind of like these gangland mentalities that he's trying to survive. He's trying to survive this drug war, this corruption, and you don't have a choice. Like, if you don't pay us, it's your life. That is the life he lived. Knowingly, unknowingly, it doesn't matter. That's what he was surrounded by. Even in California, when they had the Zoot Suit riots, there was a lot of that going on, like pay up. Even in Mexico, even in all parts of America, that there is that mentality of like protection. And so that's one of my theories, that he was approached and threatened to pay up or else, and he was like, well, I'm not going to pay up, and there's not going to be an or else. So he wanted to make his own way, and that's my theory. I don't know. When I think what would Carl do, I think that kind of sums it up for me. That is what he would do. So I was thinking about this as I was cutting grass today. There's so many people in these articles and in these books that say Carl was a huge player in the underworld. And I was like, I think that for the first time in my life, I have just come up with a title for my own book. It's going to be Underworld, On the World. What do you think about that? I'm working on it. Because to a lot of these people, even to the guy that wrote this book, which I don't know much, but I'm almost guaranteeing that I'm not wrong, I'll go with my gut. To these people that write this stuff and make book covers like this and say they're so experienced that they've been doing this since 1978, they need an excuse. They need an outlet. They need a scapegoat. They need a hook like this. You know, because to Carl, he owned his world, and he was his own person. And to the Moran family, they owned that world. And to people like this, you know, they just need some type of script, I guess. I don't know. You know, and and I could relate because, to so many people, I've been told so often, like I was told one time, like, Evan, we want you to be realistic. Like, you know, my reality is not is not for you to define. You know, my reality is that I worked for a corporation of this caliber. You know, this is my reality. Do you have that experience? Do you have this paperwork with your name on it? No. And I think that that's what this investigator with Carl was trying to say. Like, as much as it burned him up to say it out loud, he was like, he knew how vital. I think, is it in this book? So right here, the opening is Humpty Dumpty. It says Humpty Dumpty sat on the wall. Humpty Dumpty had a great fall. All the king's horses and all the king's men couldn't put Humpty together again. So this is like a tacky way of. This is just tacky to me, but you know, I don't want to spoil the book or anything. But the guy that was like heavily in charge of this investigator of seeing, like, putting a stop, putting an end to all of this, to making sure that the people that were connected to Carl finally got caught, finally got locked up, finally got put away for life, for all of the chaos and crimes and vendettas and sprees and everything that they were doing and were using Carl to do. He, as much as I guess it irked him to say this, as much as it, you could tell. I was watching it and like you could tell like it kind of chewed at him, like he was almost like biting his tongue when he said this. You know, the reality of who Carl is and who he was, there should have never been a reason that Carl was put in that type of place. Carl should have been with round the clock. He should have probably been sitting next to the investigator, to be honest with you. Like, Carl should have never, ever, ever been left out of sight. Ever. Because that was like this investigative agency, you know, that was their connection. Like, that was their way in to put an end and to get through to this crime organization. like he was. I'm almost positive they say he was their informant. He that was the whole purpose of getting him in the first place. Like that was the whole. I wouldn't say of capturing him, but that was the whole enchilada. Like that was the whole arrangement to begin with, was to put him in this maximum, security prison. And at the end of the day, there's paranoia and bad people. And but to see that even the investigator held Carl to such a high regard, like I don't I don't think much is understood about. I need to grab my water bottle. I don't think much is understood about, you know, if you look at like some of the CCTV of Carl, he is just authentically himself. And imagine, like, knowing Carl knew his truth. He didn't need anybody to, he could not be compromised. There were jailers inside of that prison that tried to compromise him and tell him to pay up for protection in here. And Carl said very naughty words to these guys. And, he could not be bought, he could not be compromised. And I think that that was what made him such a great asset to the law enforcement agencies, because that's exactly why they had this problem with this crime family, because there were jailers inside of the prison that were corrupt, and these crime families, they had that type of reach, and so this law enforcement agency, this investigator, and so many others cannot put a stop to the Moran family. The Moran family is on this unreal, have been on this unreal takeover, and nobody can stop them. Brothers, a pair of brothers died, and I think Carl was ultimately, it was later on, he was accused of 4 killings. I won't spoil the rest, but potentially may have been more. And but when you see, I'm not justifying what Carl did, it's wrong. To take a life is wrong. But compared to what the Moran family has done, and Carl was in fear of his life. He had every right and every reason to be. This Moran family and the people involved, even one guy, the Russian guy, he had taken out already 2 detectives. So, okay, you compare this Russian guy, he knocked out 2 heavy hitters in these agencies, and here Carl is, poor Carl, just trying to stand up for himself and survive. Like, these weirdo creepos are coming after him, and he defends himself. And that is why I think that that investigator in this diary of Carl's story, that's why I think this investigator, did he call him a coward because he said committing the murder, committing those crimes is that it's cowardice. It is. There is a system in place. As messed up as it may be, there are ways to get help. Sadly, we do not live in a perfect world. And so for that, I understand. That's his opinion of Carl. But what I do think makes this investigator a great investigator is the fact that he had the strength to openly admit that Carl was the greatest person that an ethical agency should have and could have utilized to finally put an end to a large criminal operation organization. And that as to why he was placed there in that type of setting is still who knows. I mean, I feel like the obvious is corruption. I feel like he was placed in a safe place to play both sides, and I think it backfired. And but I do see this investigator. I do see, and maybe I see the reality, because I've lived that experience of being like Carl, where you're so torn. It's almost like you're playing both sides of the fence. Like he he is in not in fear, but imagine if the Moran family knew that he was working with law enforcement to capture them, to uncover all of their crimes and hold them accountable for it. Imagine what that would feel like. And what I love about Carl is that even though he's going through this, he is just on his computer, he's keeping himself busy. He's like, when you see some of the footage of him being on his computer and pulling out little designs, like, I don't know, it's almost just like it makes you oddly a bit joyful. Like, this man is finding the greatest pleasures in the most horrendous, awful place. Like, he is finding ways to, keep himself entertained and safe and feel loved, and showing his daughters and his kids and his family how much he loves them every single day. And it's just like, I've been in that place where, you know, you understand what the repercussions are of, you know, what is on the other side if the Moran family finds out that I'm, working with law enforcement so that they can put a stop to their takeover, because their constant takeover was unreal. I'm talking two detectives already taken out. Who knows how many other cops the reality was, on the books, off the books of what was going on. So I think that the investigators involved, not the investigator in charge of holding Carl accountable, I think that guy was pretty straight to the truth. But I think that the investigators at the time, the police that locked Carl away, I think that they were corrupt, and later turns out that one of them was corrupt, and one of them ended up going down for this huge corruption scandal. But I think it was two. There's two detectives that got wiped out, but I don't feel like there were two detectives too that put Carl away. Did that last time? I could be wrong, but I think I'm right. And one of them was actually caught up in this huge scandal of corruption. Like, he was basically a part of the whole crime ring as well. But I think that, the guys that put Carl away, they did want to use him as an informant, but I feel like they were already a bit bribed and tainted as well. And I think that they wanted to play both sides of the fence too, and use Carl to play both sides of the fence, to like have their cake and eat it too. And they didn't want it to be so obvious, that Carl was cooperating with them, so they had to put him in that facility. And I think it super backfired. And I think the only reason that it backfired because there was this weirdo crazy guy there that took Carl's life. and I think that's the only reason it backfired. I don't think it would have backfired if that weirdo crazy guy was there, Matthew Johnson. Like, if he was not there, I think that Carl would have been fine and could have wrote it out and maybe ended up with his family again. But it wasn't in God's plans, and this weirdo was there, and I think that it just backfired on everyone. And I think that's why finally the investigator that was in charge of like everything with Carl later on, the one that I constantly refer to as saying, he still doesn't understand like why Carl was placed there in a place where he was exposed to so much danger. He was like, if he was my informant, I would have wrapped him up in cotton. Just I don't know. Carl lost the plot. Now he's in one. Carl Williams bragged he had won the Underworld War because he was still alive, unlike his rivals. But he crowed too soon. When the last Moran was gunned down, Williams seemed safe in his prison cell, but he wasn't floating. The penny had dropped. He too was a victim of the gangland vendetta he'd started. Instead of a quick end on the street, he faced a crushing 35-year sentence. The man who had once boasted he ran the state now had just one dream: early release, but not in a body bag. Williams was locked up with two men he thought were mates. Maybe they were, but not with him. In their world, the closest to you can be the deadliest. In their world, the closest to you can be the deadliest. I feel like that's a bit off, but this is Australia's underbelly. So, but I don't know. I don't really like how this book is just like super, super, super tacky. I feel it's written in a tacky way. It's like truth or Underwood myth question mark. And like he put here, he did not know jail was a death sentence. You know, I don't know. This is just like very, very, very dramatic how it's written. And I think that's why I was like, okay, well, I think it just kind of came to me like seeing how dramatized is, how over dramatic this underworld thing is, you know, or like this street life gang, whatever this is, who knows whatever they try to make or portray, you know, it. I think that's why I think it's so tacky to me, you know, to this crime reporter, like this is the underworld, this is drug lords and a drug lord family, and but you know, while somebody like that sees this as the underworld, Carl and the Moran family, they own the world. You know, Carl is not thinking in his mind, oh, I run the state. You know, Carl is somebody in the world. And the Moran family, they know they control the world there, that world. And it's just really tacky that somebody has that mindset. But guess what? Writing that sells these books. There's no price on this book. But, oh wait, no, I guess not. You know, I don't know. I guess I'll check out what this book sells for. See if I can find it right now. Underbelly, the Golden Casket. So this is what Google says. Underbelly: The Golden Casket is a 2010 true crime book by Australian journalists John Sylvester and Andrew Rule, part of the popular Underbelly series. The book details the violent Melbourne underworld wars and focuses heavily on underworld figure Carl Williams, who was famously jailed and later killed in prison. This is from the National Library of Australia. So, like I said, I mean, this is in the National. This was written in 2010. We're in 2027 now. So 17 years later, this is published in the National Library of Australia. That's why I am saying National Library of Australia. Like, Carl wasn't just. He knew who he was. You know, he wasn't just some low life criminal. And everybody portrays him as this horrible monster, low life criminal, committed these crimes. And that is not who Carl was at all. Which I'm not defending him, what he did was wrong. But, so let's see how much that they're selling it for. Apparently, this came out, the real life Gangland events covered in the book. Or were you looking for the information on Modest Mouse album? I don't know what that's about. Okay. Let's go to shopping to see how much the book is worth. It's nowhere on sale, nowhere. Um, shopping. It's not. It's not for sale. It's not for sale. Is the? I mean, I have the ISBN. It's everywhere. I guess it's not produced anymore. And that's the thing. All like this narrative in this book, it says like the back of it. It says like Carl bragged, but if you look at the footages and everything, Carl he never bragged about it. He was not a bragger. Even when they show his records on his computer, like he was just like, rule number one: never snitch on yourself. But he was snitching on himself. He was like, he met this girl named Stacy. Like he was. I mean, he was not somebody that was like bragging about these things. He was just Carl. Like he was just himself. And I don't know. Maybe I can relate because he knew how the world worked. Like he knew rule number one was never snitch on yourself, but he snitched on himself. Like he was really himself, and he was just unafraid of being himself, and he was never going to let anyone intimidate him or threaten him. Did he go about it the right way? No, violence is never the answer. But this book swears he bragged, and he didn't brag. Like he wasn't out there saying, "I did all these things." No, like he was truthful. They asked him, like, "Why did you do these things?" I did this because these people were trying to end my life. You know, like what am I supposed to do? Who was gonna help him? Nobody. They weren't helping him. They were corrupt. They were taking money, investing their money, taking money, moving their money. Mm-mm. Let's change true crime on prime time. This book right here doesn't have that. Let's see. Let's see how much books got as a for. Nine, seven, eight. Well, Biblio says it's 37 bucks. I mean, 39 bucks and 92 cents. Oops. So Biblio says it's $39 for 92 cents. And allegedly on Amazon it's 90 bucks. So let's see if I'm right. Let me look up Sly Inc. and see if they write the book I'm talking about. But the books I'm talking about are nonfiction, and this is based on a true story. For the most part, they maybe the closest would be the Chopper series. So Sly Inc. publishes gritty, highly successful true crime books. Well, so anyways, I found that book. I told myself like, okay, so then I kept hearing this yellow jacket or wasp keep ramming into this window at the library, and I kept hearing this hooting and hollering outside, and I was like, what is going on? But anyways, I was just looking at all the shelves, and I wanted to buy some books, and I thought it'd be a great opportunity to, I don't know, resell some, whatever, give some gifts or whatever it may be. So anyways, I keep hearing this noise outside, or some music. I'm thinking there's music coming out of somebody's car. And finally, I just put the books aside in the corner and I go out there to see what all the hooting and hollering is about. And it's this guy playing this guitar. It was like a dark mahogany, maybe dark wood guitar with a leather strap. I can't remember leather. He was in all black, had an Oilers hat on and a black shirt, and he was wearing riding a Huffy bike. Kind of had the same light as one of my weapon flashlights or whatever. Well, I don't have a weapon. What is it called? I found a light on the ground and I thought it was a bike light. Turns out it's not a bike light. It's a gun light. And anyways, oh well. So anyways, what happened? Someone, I'm like, hey, do you mind if I listen? Because he was playing the guitar. He was strumming away, no pick. And he's like, sure. And then we just struck up conversation. He played some Pink Floyd. I told him he had a Highway to Heaven vibe going. He played that for a bit. And oddly, it was on the same bench where I called the FBI and one time. And don't get me started on that whole thing that happened between me and them, the stupidness about them telling me 2 days ago or whatever it was that, oh yes, that I could never call them again, which was dumb, which they never did. They tried to set me up. Don't try to set me up and tell me lies, things that never happened. And don't try to set me up to be stupid because I'm not stupid. And they say, if you want to play stupid, I'll play stupid too. And in the military, they say, when one of us goes down, we all go down. So if you want to sit here and try to set me up to go down as a loser, whatever the crap you're trying to do, never call me again, well, guess what? When the day you need me to tell you, Mr. Gregory, this is why I'm not. I'm gonna tell you, don't call me again. How about that? No, I'm not a jerk like that. I told him no, I'm ready to tell them to everybody, but that's not my priority. I was sitting on that bench one time where Samuel Reynolds was, and I was telling them about what happened to me at the shelter. Granted, it probably would have never happened to me had they would have just listened to me the first time when I walked in person. I was 30 years old, but I'll leave it alone. So, anyways, he had a white cape on. Actually, I put it away. My ukuleles somewhere over there. So I was just like, wow, he gifted me his capo. There was a little hair on it. Kind of somewhat looked familiar, but there was a hair on it. And but hey, it was the coolest capo ever. And I was like, wow, this guy just gave me a capo. And everybody on YouTube plays their ukulele with capo. Everybody. Even people that play cheat notes, they all play with capo. And for the longest time, I wanted to 3D print my own capo. And I was like, man, I could 3D print my own. And actually, it's funny because I've wanted to 3D print my own capo, my own ukulele holder. Come to find out, the guy that created that capo, he kind of had the same idea as me. He was a machinist like me, and he designed his own capo. That's how he created. It takes 20 people to make one of those capos. It's crazy, huh? So what else? And then we kind of struck with conversation, and just me being the guy that I am. He was just so nice giving me the capo. I don't know. I just like was like, hey, like if you want to stay in touch, will you stay in touch with me? Can we stay in touch? I mean, I thought that was nice of him. So yep. And he's like, you can call, or text me anytime you want. I called him one time. He said he had two different numbers. He said he had one on Wi-Fi, one without, which I get it. A lot of the homeless guys at the shelters were like that. And I'm not saying he's homeless, but a lot of the homeless guys at the shelters had two different phones or phones. And so, what was I going to say? So then I called. It went to voicemail. Apparently, he came up with this narrative that his girlfriend had the phone, and then he called me from the phone he was on or whatever. And so I have two of his numbers, whatever. But he stayed in touch with me yesterday, and I showed him. I said, to reciprocate the kindness of him giving me the capo, I set aside the duplicates of my vintage guitar pick collection, and I'll set them aside and I'll give those to him whenever I get the chance. Right here. So these are some duplicates. There's, I tossed in one vintage, there's a vintage Fender. This red one is a vintage medium Fender pick. I just can't part ways with like my singles because like I have one Playboy Mansion single guitar pick. I wanted to get part with my Guitar Center one because I'm like, but I don't know. I just feel like it's nice to have one of each for now. I don't know. And actually, I had some pretty rare picks. Like I'm sure the Playboy Bunny one's rare, but a Pick Boy. Apparently, I had a very rare Pick Boy pick in there. Apparently, the pinups and the Marilyn Monroe Pick Boys are like rare. I don't know, but and I had a couple. I think like one, two, three, four Fenders, four or five Fender vintage Fender picks, green, purple. I think two reds, and I don't know. But anyways, so that was kind of him. I don't know. It's like I always say, like it's not my job to investigate. It's just my job to report, and that's what I was taught. That's what I stick to. Being taught that got me this far, and I, you know, I think I learned early on when I was going through what I was going through with Tesla. Like, I really just tried to report to the right people to get help, and all of those agencies failed me. And I think there's another book that I got over there. I think it's called Criminal Intent. I haven't really gotten into that book, but I think in Criminal Intent, on one of the pages, I could be wrong, but I'm almost positive. Is it Criminal Intent or is it in this book? Let's see. Let me see. Let me see. It was something about Criminal Intent that caught my eye. I don't know. Ooh. Well, I think this book and in the other book, in Criminal Intent in this book, like one of the common themes is that, Carl's case would have made the entire country lose trust in these agencies. If people knew the truth about Carl and what happened to Carl, which it did ultimately end up to losing the public's trust in law enforcement and so much more. But I think that was the common theme with this story and with Criminal Intent. The common theme was, even here it says that the police had no idea who was behind these things. Like, all of these horrible things kept happening, and the police couldn't stop it. And even though they could sit here and blame Carl for everything or whatever, it wasn't that Carl was doing all of these things. Is that Carl was not like he was he was the realest person. He was not hiding who he was. He was real. He was out there. Everybody else was playing a role. They were paying to play, and they were paid. These people that like the Moran family, if you go through each and every one of them, which I haven't yet, but from what I've skimmed, every single one of them was very wealthy, powerful, educated, not like highly educated, but these people, they had power. And, you know, it, they had, maybe they wouldn't be hiding, it's not that they were hiding because they were scared. They were not putting themselves out there like Carl was putting himself out there. Like everybody, I guess if they want to call it the underworld, it wasn't the underworld to them. These people were powerful people. They were not operating under the radar. They were operating openly, and they had power. Who was going to stop them? Nobody. But Carl was not like them. They were a large family, and they were blood related, and they had connections with each other. Carl, I think, was the easiest to get to because he was openly just living his life. Like he was like, I think he was very conflicted with like, this is my life. How do I get out of it? I can't get out of it no matter how hard I try. So just embrace it, and that's what he was doing. So, but that's what I found was the common theme between this book and the other book. That you know, I guess if you want to say these tensions and these problems that arose, and that the police, it says police wanted to offer the $1 million reward for information leading to his capture, and like all of these things, like the police did not want the general public to know that they had absolutely no handle over the situation, and it extremely backfired on them when Carl died. And I think part of why the police a majority of the reason why police didn't want anyone to know what was going on wasn't because they were corrupt. They were, but it wasn't the main reason. The main reason was because if the general public knew that they already failed time and time and time and time, they're failing at bringing down the Moran family, you know, nobody would trust them anymore. You're the agency that's supposed to make everybody feel safe and make sure that this does not happen and it's happening at this scale and at this rate. That was the main reason. But another reason was because that was the Moran family's reach. They had that reach. They bought these cops off. They bought their, security. They paid for. They were crooked and powerful. So, but that was one of the common themes in both books that I took note of was, you know, the reality of these circumstances and situations, which shed light to the fact that these powerful government entities could not overpower this criminal organization at all. Like they could all combine together. I mean, it's Australia, but they could all come together and be combined from municipal to their country's highest levels, and they all did come together at one point. And that was one of the solutions was to put Carl and use him as an informant, and backfired. So today I went. Well, yesterday I only went swimming for 5 minutes. I texted with Samuel Reynolds. I did tell him that I had a bad experience with Jeremy Reynolds at the refuge. He said no relation, and I told him what happened, and I told him what happened to me a bit, and you know, I'm just doing my best through the situation. I I felt like with Samuel, you know, that somebody I have never had somebody where I could just really just talk to, and that felt good. Like with Samuel, that I could just like really just talk to him like that, and I did this mental health thing, and I sat there for like a long amount of time, telling them about my mental health and things in my life, doing my best to remember things. My memory is super fragmented, but I just feel like what I got out of that session was understanding that I have never, ever, ever talked it all out. Like I have never talked to anybody, and mind you, like I feel like what is happening should have happened before my situations, like before my accident, and now, which is like better late than never. But I just feel like I kind of feel like now what's the point? Because now it's not that I don't care, but I just want to live my life. And like Samuel said, like he was like, you're surviving, you know, and it's this book about Carl that made me realize, like Mr. Earl would say, you're a survivor to me, and now everything Mr. Earl's ever told me, I just feel like it's just flushed down the drain. Like I'll flush it all down the drain. It's really garbage for me. He's a sellout, but I just feel like when Samuel said it, it made me understand that you know it it kind of just hit different when Samuel told me it. Mr. Rose told me it all the time, but when Samuel told me, I'm gonna show you how to like really get through this, and it really kind of gave me the sense of like strength when Samuel said it. Like, you know, there are so many people that will write books about, or that have written books about. They made a whole series about Carl. He's dead now. Oh, I didn't mean to spoil it, but he's dead now. If you made it 2 hours in, and it's like Carl could have done so many things. Like he could have sold out the Moran family off the bat. He could have, but that like he did what was best and right for him, and just because he did that, it didn't mean that he was a threat to anybody else. But so many other people saw him and knew his truth and saw that as a threat because his truth would dismantle and disorganize their failures. Like they have failed in so many ways. And I don't know, like it almost seems lazy to me because I feel like, you know, why the Moran family had so much pull was that complacency in these federal systems. You know, even when they had Carl, it's almost like they caught the big fish, and so because they caught such a big fish that could feed the whole village for the harvest or whatever you want to call it, they got complacent. You know, they didn't want to go fishing anymore. They just caught a big fish, so they didn't want to go fish anymore. They had enough food set aside to get through the winter. But then here, winter's gone, the fish is almost gone. That means they got to go out back into the waters, and that's what happened. Like, well, not really. Thing about it is, here comes some savage weirdo and takes the whole fish, takes the whole fish out, and it is lazy and complacency. Like these people thought we got the biggest guy to take them all down, and instead of just going and taking them all down, going in and doing what they're supposed to be doing, investigating, arresting, putting these people away, informing them and educating them, you're violating the law. This is the law that you're violating. Stop doing it. Instead of doing that, they just sat back and put their hands together and laid back because we got Carl. That's our way through to them. And one or two things happens. They know we got him, and they want to cooperate with us, or we use Carl to get through to them. Either way, we got them, and that's just everything just backfired on everybody. And sadly, Carl lost his life. And sadly, his kids don't have a father, and sadly, his spouse, even though I think she married or whatever, but I'm sure there was still love there in some way. He was someone, and the book was tacky. I'll start doing my research on more and other things, but I feel like I'm in a better space mentally as far as like, not that I ever lost my mentality, but I feel like as far as that emotional resilience, it's there. And I think that Carl's story, what I learned from Carl's story is so many people have an interpretation of your life and tell you what could have, should have, would have been done for you. But ultimately, Carl's strength was he knew that. And his defense was to tell people, you don't decide for me. I get to decide for me. And if you want a decision to be made, look around you. You know, you're gonna decide for yourself. And I heard his wife say that two corrupt cops came into his cell and asked him for protection, and in exchange for money, that he was going to pay them a certain amount, an unreal amount for protection. And Carl said, "Look at your mate. You have a better chance of asking him to X-rated things than for me to pay you up because I'm never going to pay you up." And that is something that I can relate immensely like with Carl is that sense of self and not being bought out or compromised and never allowing anybody to compromise your values. Like today I was crossing the street with my power chair and some guy tried to tell me, oh, it was an Amazon driver actually, he tried to tell me to cross the road. And I'm not going to cross the road because the hand is still flashing red. And, I'm not going to have somebody compromise my values, make a decision for me. I was at the gym and it was an awkward position, awkward situation. Like, I was wiping down the seat and this guy told me not to wipe down the seat. I still wiped down the seat. I mean, did I wipe down the whole bench like I would have if I was by myself? No, because it was an awkward position and he was right next to me. Whatever, and I was done with the machine, but out of, some form of courtesy, I guess. So, anyways, today I hung out with another Sam. So, Sam I met at the library at a Bruce Lee biography signing. I have the book in my closet, I should read it, and he's been staying in touch with me. And so he's a friend I met at the library. I met both Sams at the library. And I owe Sam $10, but he took me out to eat at a place down the street, and we worked out together, which was good. I had somebody I could work out with. I'm gonna go back again to the community center. I think going there is really, really great for me. I didn't even know the place existed, and it's been all summer, so I wish I kind of knew that the place existed before summer was up. But I'm glad that I know it's there now, and at least I get to enjoy the pool until it's closed for winter. And I'm glad that I found a place where I feel safe, and the showers are awful, but I'll survive. And I didn't take soap with me today, but I think that that's a good thing because I have had like a lot of sensitive, like my skin is clearing up. Like honestly, this is probably, I know it's sad to say that this is the clearest my skin has been. It's still pretty blotchy, but it's pretty clear. And I actually have a little hive right here. I wonder what that's from. I should probably take some of my medicine. I get these little like red hives, like tiny little speck red hives. I'm trying to think of. I wasn't around any dogs today. Kind of, sort of. This pup likes to chase me. He's so cute though. He's like a labradoodle type thing or something like that. He's like gray. I think you call him a labradoodle. Yes, he's a labradoodle or something like that. He's gray. It's funny because today he found like another way around the gate to come chase me. I'm always like, Puppuccino. He was waiting for me when I came back. And I go like this, I go, and he starts barking real loud when I do that. But today he found this little way around the gate to come follow me all the way to the end. He's a cute pup. I'm like, hi, sweetie. He's like, whoa, 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 whoa. He just goes nuts. He drives me nuts when I'm in my scooter, I guess. So today I hung out with the older Sam, not Samuel Reynolds, but Sam. I hung out with him. I took him to Ted Lolo. I took him to this Mexican place, and he ate 2 tacos, corn barbacoa with everything on it. The red sauce was too hot for him. I don't know why he got red, but he wanted red. And then I had, what did I have? I forgot what I had. Oh, I had chili relleno with cheese. I didn't have any meat today. Maybe because I was around some meat? I don't know. Something made me allergic today. Something gave me a hive today. I did my best to stay away from the dogs. It's sad. I don't know. My sister was here yesterday too. Anyways, I'll survive. But I've been on here for 2 hours too long. So I just, you know, I just, it's sad that I feel that, like, I cannot, my see this hand, it's getting a lot stronger, a lot better. I swam today. I did a good job swimming. The water weights. I did some pull-ups. I did the gym a little bit. I can't do all the fancy acrobatic stuff that people do in the pool, but I watched them for a bit, being a creep. Try not to be a creep, but I don't know things. Like, my mind is so. I'm the Humpty Dumpty that can never be put back together again. Like, my memories are so, like, I don't know. Like, I know, like, basic things when people ask me where you from, but even then, it's like I don't. It makes me a bit sad because I don't have stories like people have stories. Like, I don't have stories of, like, my high school. Like, I don't have these types of stories that I can tell. Um, but I do my best. Like, I don't know. All I know is really, like, the now, and I just stay in that because I think, like, when I talk about or when I'm asked about past things, it's just so hard for me. And so that's why I just really stay focused in the now because this is who I am. And I, I, I've watched people do these, like, acrobatic things. I don't know what it's called. I think it's like a butterfly or something. I call it the butterfly thing. And I tried that. But I think that because of my spinal fusion, I saw some people use their legs when they did that, and I saw some people do not use their legs. So I guess it's like a preference. But I tried both ways, and I don't know, it wasn't working out for me. Like, I was like, this is not working out for me. I don't know if it's because I'm still too, like, stiff in my lower body, but, like, I don't know why. Like, if I swim, like, if I go underwater and I swim, or, like, if I do this, and, like, how I was taught, like, swim, like, use my legs, I'm good. I tried the backstroke thing. I think I'm actually better at the backstroke thing than this butterfly thing. And the reason I think I'm better at the backstroke thing is because, like, I feel like I have more control using my waist to lift myself, like, up and back, like, and paddle my legs than I do, like, like, I think I have more of a, like, momentum to get my, maybe because that's how I always put myself in my wheelchair, to, like, get my thighs up in front of me instead of, like, having my thighs behind me like this. So I don't know. So it's just like a strange thing. But I had fun at the pool, and then we went to, after that we went to the taco place, and then I went and got some snacks, and I came back, and I thought I'd get on here. I haven't been on here for a while. I just think it's important to, like, purge my mind of what's on my mind because I can't type. Vlogging is my outlet. What I said in 2 hours, I would take me 23 days to type, like 2 days to type up. And I just feel like for me, this is what works. You know, I'm not the type of person to where, like, I went through, like, I feel like I went through sounding the alarm in my life when I had my workplace injury. And I don't have any agenda. Like, I don't have the intent to, reach out to everybody and tear everything down, or I'm not looking for acknowledgement or anything like that. I think that I have a history that says otherwise. I would rather not be bothered, but I have learned in this process and the process that I continue to go through that, you know, that's not the answer, it's not the solution. And, you know, conforming and complacency is not, it's not that it's not an option, it's just that it's not helpful to me or anybody in my life. And I don't want to call these people, like, you know, the FBI treated me so horrible, like that. Do you think this is how I want to spend my day? No, like I would rather be on YouTube vlogging. I would rather be doing other things. I'd rather be taking a nap, and so that I have the stamina to do my homework. I'd rather be doing so many. I have a million other things. I could be cutting the backyard. I could be catching up on the backyard, catching up on hand washing my clothes. You know, is it of importance to me? Yes, and I feel like I've earned my to be respected, and I feel that do do I know the appropriate channels to reach out to and use my resources wisely? I do. That is exactly why I don't go out calling everybody and writing everything every time, all the time. I probably should. Actually, I know I should. I should do these things more often, and I don't. You know, I just feel like I want to be at peace. I've already done that, and I will continue to do that for myself when I feel like it. I don't feel like it right now. I don't feel I could have written the CIA 2 days ago when the FBI gave me a hard time and told them I think this should be on your freaking radar. Not that it isn't already on the radar, but I feel like I could be like, hey, this should be on your radar. This is you have to know what like when I got that weirdo call, violent threatening call, which is why I called the FBI because I got a weird spam phone call threatening call. I was like, okay, do I call 911? Am I in danger? No. Whoever the Rahim is, right? What am I going to do about it? At least I took action. Most people don't even take action. I have this huge curiosity. Has anybody in the Houston Police Department ever received a call like this, and what have they done? Because I guarantee you, they didn't call 988 and tell them that Rahim just got threatened. I promise you that everybody from the director of the FBI to the bottom of it, they received a phone call just like the one I received, and I promise you they didn't call 988. They didn't forward the text or whatever to 7266. They didn't write up a report to OIG. I did this, and a lot of people don't. So I'm at the point where just if you don't want anything to do with me, then leave me alone. You know what I mean? Like that I tried my best to do the right thing. When could I tell you my rhyme or reasoning for it? No, because this is my memory is just do I have the capacity to make memories? That's entirely different than going back into my memory and trying to pull something out. I just I'd sit here I just I'm sure I can, but at the rate that it's happening, there's no point. That's why I'm just like, man, if I sit here and I'm just eating away at myself because I can't remember what I did when I was 7 years old, what good is it to anybody? It's not doing me any good. And I've already dealt with those sensations and those emotions of that irritation of why now? Why try to help me now when I try to tell you in detail the best that I could that I needed help, that these things were happening, what was wrong. And I was still actively working for the company. So when people had the power, the authority through me to access and walk through my workplace, when they had a way in to make sure that everything that ended up coming out anyways happened, and now I'm just I said, I could have gone straight to my resources and said, well, the resource that I'm supposed to use when this happens, they're turning me away, and not only are they turning me away, but they're trying to pull this false script out, and I'm not going to let that happen. Not to me anymore. So, of allegedly telling me never call again, that's not true. So you're telling, I wonder how many times Donald Trump has called the FBI. I wonder how many times. So when you work for the FBI and you get threatened, what do you do? because you're supposed to do like everybody else does, unless there's something else I don't know. Because Tiger Woods got pulled over by the police, first call he made was Donald Trump. So what is really going on? You know what I mean? And I'm just like, you can't sit here and say that in a lifetime, like, who am I to predict or tell somebody in a lifetime what they will experience? So it's like for anybody to say you're a repeat tipster, well, all day, every day, even on Facebook, which I think is dumb, and I'm pretty sure it's a violation of the law. On so many people, even local police departments are
Check
putting
sentinel message.
so many police departments are putting out, hey, call us. Hey, if you see this person, call us, call us, call us. Hey, do this. And then like they want to sit here and treat me the way that they treat me. I hope and pray to God that when one of your family members has an emergency, because what these people are doing to me is not going unnoticed. You see what I'm saying? Like, if the shoe were on the other foot, you know, and that's why when I had an interaction with John who said that he was in the field for like 20 years, I just feel like you're the problem. Look at yourself in the mirror. You're the problem. You know, you're the reason why what has happened to me continues to happen to me. And when I call VAOIG and an idiot like you answers the phone, do you even know? Like, my roommate was 80 years old. Do you think that Mr. Earl, do you think that any other 80-year-old veteran has the capacity to pick up the phone and call VAOIG to report everything? That they've been scammed, that they're not getting the appropriate health care, that there's fraud, waste, and abuse under their medical DOD ID in their accounts? No. So don't sit here and tell me, if you want to sit here and say you have 20 years experience and you've been doing this for 20 years, well, that's 20 years of you sitting on your ass doing nothing and allowing this system to abuse veterans. How about that? You're part of the waste. Every single paycheck you've ever gotten, John VA Operator 16, every single check you've gotten from the government is a receipt of waste, time wasted on somebody like you, pretty much. I can promise you that I was not a perfect service technician, and it may have been a small amount of time, but I probably got paid way more than you made in those 20 years. And I probably made way more money and had way more college under my belt than you had in those 20 years and 2 months. In those 2 months of my Tesla internship. I almost guarantee you that I studied way more than you've ever learned in 20 years of working in the field, and I have a way better comprehension of how to utilize a phone and what, down to the patent, I can tear apart an iPhone and put it back together in my sleep. So really, you don't know who's on the other end of the phone before you start telling me whatever the fuck is a waste of time. You know, you are wasting time. The government is wasting time and money on somebody like you that should go back to school and learn how to, one, use a phone and talk to whoever's on the other side of it, and two, how to end a phone call. It's weird. Like, these people don't know how to have a freaking conversation. And it's so strange because from what I remember, I have worked with billionaires, I have worked with millionaires, I have worked with people that, I have worked with parents that bought their teenagers their first Tesla, and they had more professionalism and respect for me and in an interaction over the phone and in person, had more organization than this phony lady who called me from Penn, whatever the crap she called me from, and John from VAOIG. It's so sickening to me that I have interacted with teenagers where their parents bought them Teslas. Their parents are standing right next to them. I call them and say, "This is Mr. Mendez. I'm the service technician that's about to come through and service on your vehicle. I'm 40 minutes away. Whatever." I show up, the parents right there next to their son, and their son over the phone was super respectful, professional. I show up and the parents right there standing with their son, and their son is the most respectful, person, both over the phone and in person. And these are teenagers, and these are adults that work for the federal government that I interact with, and they have no professionalism. They have no. They're just retarded. They're idiots. They're dumb, and I don't understand that. Like, there was one occasion where there were, I think it was a pair of twins. There were two people. Their parents showed up, and they were just beyond respectful to me. Their parents, them, and there was one time I showed up to a house with multiple Teslas. The man loved his family enough to buy Teslas for himself, his wife, and his daughters. So I think there was like four Teslas. They all had Teslas. I think two were the same. That was another family. The dad bought the exact same car for himself and his daughter. They had the exact same color, exact same car, and these are people that are wealthy to some degree, and even if they're not wealthy, you know, they own Teslas, which at the time was not like now, but at the time was very phenomenally, reputable, safe car, and they treated me over the phone and in person with respect, and so many of them worked in just phenomenal jobs. I went to real estate agent house, professors' houses. One professor worked at Cornyn, I think. I mean, I could go on and on and on. And here I have been struggling in the state of Texas with all these idiots. It makes absolutely no sense to me. I always say the worst mistake I ever made was coming back to Texas. I should have just stayed in New York. So, anyways, that's kind of my spiel. It's not that I don't care, it's just that I don't feel like it. You know, I can sit here and I can write whoever I want. It's well within my right. It is not a crime to report in good faith facts of what's really going on. You know, so every single investigator, every single when they call and report things, you know, you're gonna sit here and say they're a repeat tipster. That makes no sense. And they just answered and hung up. And mind you, when you go through the robo system, like your first name, last name, EVANMENDEZ, give your address, give your phone number, a lot of the times that machine doesn't even get it right. You're like, yes, no, it doesn't even get it right sometimes. So it's like, I heard V, I heard Z, I heard this, yes or no. And then sometimes it just does whatever it wants. I'm not ever angry. Like, I don't even get angry that I'm misunderstood. Like, I just go. I think that I was around this guy named Z, Leonard Z, and he was like, I'm misunderstood. And ever since I heard him say that, I thought that that was just super lame, you know. And I saw this movie with Nicole Kidman. I forgot the name of it. I think it was like The Interpreter or something like that. But she said that grief is a lazy form of revenge. And I can relate to that so much because I feel like so often with my workers' compensation, it's almost like the counter to that is like you're disgruntled. And, you know, no, I'm not disgruntled. I almost lost my life. And bare minimum, I deserve bare minimum because it's well within my rights compensation for my workplace injury. I mean, there's no other way around it. As to why these insurance companies think that there's a way around it by denying is just dumb. Anyways, do I know what resources have capacities for what and jurisdiction over what? I do. That's why I write out to them. And I get these hooey fooey buffoony responses like we don't have jurisdiction over it. Since when? Since I wrote you and exposed the truth? I believe it. Show me where under the sun it says you don't have jurisdiction. And it's not true. When I sent the international courts all the papers from for Tesla, I know that I did the right thing. Did anything come of that? No, because nothing like that has ever come through their courts. There is nothing in federal law or in the federal court system that says that the international courts of trade cannot accept a discriminatory case. There is in the law the exact opposite, saying that the international court is considered a federal court, therefore, they have jurisdiction to take on a federal case, especially a discrimination case, especially a case that involves international trade and finances, international finances. It is something that has probably rarely ever been seen, but it doesn't mean that it cannot happen. And I know that I did the right thing because at least I have proof that it was done. There is proof that I did it. They responded that they were not whatever, which is not true, but it's all documented, which is like better than it. To have some form of paper trail is better than nothing at all. And I always say I don't have to lie to kick it. Like, I don't have to lie. I've never lied about anything in my life, about who I am, what I am. I still don't lie about it. I'm entitled to my privacy. Like it says here, like, guard your privacy. Like, I'm entitled to that. And that's why I say, like, I think that if you're going to probe and you're going to. My mom, she always told me that she will never tell somebody in the workplace to do something she would never do herself. So if you're gonna call me with all this phony crap, then everybody under that umbrella, everybody in the government agencies better receive that phone call. And I want to know, it better be documented what every single government employee action that they took. Did they take action or no action? What action was taken? What did they do? Who did they call? What did they tell? Because I guarantee you none of them did exactly what I did. And nobody probably ever will. So I have been through things that nobody should ever one survive or go through. Does that make me a horrible person? No. And this story that I just recently read showed me how, if you let somebody write your story, how tacky it'll come out. And I think that if Carl were able to make his own book and write his own story, I don't think it would look anything like this at all. And I don't think it would have an opening of Humpty Dumpty. I think if Carl wrote his own book, he would have his own computer designs, his own web designs. He would have probably something of like some kind of hearts and crosses that remind him of Stacy, and I don't know, some kind of lovey-dovey symbol that reminds him of Stacy. And he would probably most likely have designs that remind him of his family and his daughters and pictures of his daughters and things like that. So I think at the very least today I got a grand idea for the first time of like what my first book title would be, and I think it would be Underworld on the World. Like, I think to so many, even people that textbook have lived this life and have this alleged understanding of what crimes are, I think to them, is it real? Sure. It doesn't take much for reality. The most ludicrous, lunatic, weirdo, lost in the sauce weirdos can commit a crime. It doesn't take much. People don't need a reason. I think that when it comes to the inner workings of operations. Just because you work for a federal agency doesn't mean you know how things operate. You may have a SOP, you may have protocols, I guess, but even experience, like even this 20 years experience, like I care. I don't care. Do you think that Tesla became broke trains and trains and trains over and over and over again because every single one of those employees had experience? No. You know, it's because there were people that allowed it without any form of judgment or discrimination or that exact mentality that John has of I've been out here and you're nothing but shit. You're calling me and I know who the fuck you are. No, you don't know me, John. You wish you were me for a second. And even being me, you couldn't stand to be me for half a second. You couldn't be Evan Mendez for a blink of an eye. Because, like I said to myself in my sleep the other night, imagine the women that I love and the women that I fall in love with. If I was in a marriage, if I was in a relationship with them and I had a phone call with some psycho lunatic making threats and I did nothing about it, I guarantee you that woman would have nothing to do with me faster than I could say it. So you don't fucking know me and you couldn't deal with those type of women for a second. That's exactly why you're bitter and a loser. And if you think that any woman modern day will deal with a piece of shit like you, good luck, because women right now have no tolerance for pieces of shit like you that degrade other men, degrade anybody over the phone. And you talk about what, this guy was saying that it says right here, gloating. You were the one gloating, saying you've been in the field for 20 years. I don't fucking know you, you don't fucking know me. And I don't deal with this crap. I don't care if you were in the field. I don't care if you were in the freaking strawberry fields forever or in the cornfield. I don't care if you were in freaking children of the corn or whatever the crap. I don't know you. You're a weirdo. I think you should lose your job and go back to drawing within the lines or something. Try to learn how to stay in the lines. So this whole situation, I was just like, wow, in my sleep. I know that the women that I have fallen in love with, I know that if I have no tolerance as it is for this crap, I can only imagine if I got a phone call like the one that I got and I was like, let's say I was in bed with the woman that I love and I got a psycho phone call like that and I did nothing about it, I guarantee she'd be gone. I guarantee she wouldn't even hear me out if she just knew that I got some kind of crazy phone call like that and did nothing about it. She'd be out. And I don't understand why it is that there's such resistance towards me, but it's not for me to figure out. But I know spiritually that whatever has been done to me, it comes back. They say when you do somebody the way these people done me, that comes back like sevenfold or whatever. And I don't care if you're doing it for exercise, drill. I don't care what you're doing it for to get paid. I'm not getting paid. You know what I mean? So I could care less what you're doing it for. But like even when I called HPD because Houston FBI told me to call HPD. You know, HPD had me on wait for 40 minutes, and then they transferred me over to KDPD for me to tell them that I had this weirdo psycho calling me about this suicide threat to Raheem. And so if HPD kept me on the phone for 40 minutes, if you think that anybody involved in putting me on hold for 40 minutes, it's like when you need somebody the most, and whatever in this world told you to keep me on hold for 40 minutes, trust and believe, I don't wish anybody any harm, but trust and believe that God's in control, and God's gonna flip that back because I promise you, your brother, sister, friend, or family, they're gonna call HPD, and nobody's gonna answer the phone for them because that's how life is. It's like when you're looking for something, you can't find it because any other day it'd be smack dab in front of your face, and when you need to look for it, you can't find it. So that is why I feel like, what have I done in my life? What have I done for people to treat me this way? I have done absolutely, absolutely nothing. Have I done anything for HPD to leave me on the phone for 40 minutes? No. But my thing is, be real. Like, be real, and I want HPD to show me what action they took to help me when I needed help the most. I want everybody to show me what they did to help me. Because right now, point blank, do I have speculation because people in the world care about me to try to show me, to put it all together for me? What happened to me? I had to figure it out for myself. But this was when before my spinal fusion surgery. And I think I kind of already had a good understanding of what happened to me that day. And there was one time when I was blowing leaves around the janitor's car, and here comes Robert Hackler. So I had a good understanding. You know, I'm not dumb, you know, but my thing is right now, like even when I had my surgery and I came back from it, I think that I've always had a very, very, very maybe hyper sense of time. Like this kind of time, not like it's 9:44 time, but like this time, you know, like that type of time. But when I came back from my surgery, I felt for the very first time that I knew that I'll never be right again as far as like, you know, you know, getting my timing together. I'll never be okay. You know, with my surgery, coming back from it, I think coming in and out of that surgery, my it's almost like my it's not I wouldn't say it was a lapse in my memory. In a way, it kind of was technically because of the surgery, but it was just like for myself, I was like telling myself like I'm never gonna be okay. Like I'm not gonna be okay again. You know, for me to sit here and say like that, jumping back and forth in my mind from program to program, I'm gonna be okay. I'd be lying to myself, you know. But can I still, you know, am I still programmed? Am I still able to flip the channels? Am I still able to make new memories? Yes. It just really came to me there and then that that's just something. Does it make me dumber than anybody else or dumber than I was? No, it just means that in other ways I've matured and I've grown. I am no longer just young, dumb, and filled my head with constant drownings of flashes and moments back and back and back again of the same old thing. Now everything else, every experience is a new experience to me, and I just stay in that. I wouldn't want it any other way, but I'm just speaking real talk. And real talk is, I think that I set the bar so high that I'm waiting, just like the investigator that wrote the O.J. Simpson notes. You know, I'll be writing my story, and one day somebody will look back on my story and say, this guy wrote the truth. This guy wrote the truth and maybe couldn't spell it all out, but he wrote his truth. He couldn't spell it out for us, but he wrote it out. And it only takes, like not Muhammad Ali, Dr. King's wife said, Dr. King is a one in a million, something like that. One in a million, one in a billion. And she said now there are more Dr. Kings that pop up. And I believe that's true. I believe that, that guy that wrote the OJ records, those people, uh, you know, he was one in a billion. And I think that, you know, I worked for the wealthiest company on the planet, and even I couldn't be compromised. So if I couldn't be compromised on any end, what makes anybody else think that that standard doesn't apply to them either? You know, you are meddling with me because allegedly it's your job and your profession, but it really is not. Like, I have never had a mental health care provider meddle with me that way. And why would anybody else in any other position have that authority over me? They don't. So I can't ever apply it, and I never will know how to apply it in other ways or other terms. But I know that what people are doing to me in certain ways is absolutely criminal and wrong. That I don't even know how to say out loud the equivalent of working on a car, what that would be like, because it's so horrible. It's probably worse than the equivalent of those Lifetime movies where they tinker with the brakes and cut the brake line. You know, it's worse than that. And these are people that knowingly. I was watching one movie. What did he do? I think it was a Hallmark movie where this guy comes and takes out a tire. You know, but he leaves something behind. It's like every time people mess with me, it's like they leave something behind, and I feel like I am not somebody that's not gonna like pick it up and say, oh, whoever did this. They say for every action there's a reaction, and I saw something the other day that I think I reposted it on my Facebook. Let's see, I'm about to get off here in a second. So it says, you may not be able to control what someone did to you, how they treated you, or whether they understand the pain they caused, but you can choose what you do with that pain. You are still an agent with moral agency through Jesus Christ. You can choose healing over bitterness, peace over anger, and faith over giving up. Your hurt is real, but it does not have to control who you become. And this was like David A. Bednar. It was, we cannot control the intentions or behavior of other people. However, we do determine how we will act. Please remember that you and I are agents endowed with moral agency. And let's see, I gotta like, and that's just truth. Like, all these people, they're like, I'm a federal employee, I'm a VA employee, I'm a retiree. Like, you think you're a worldly agent, but, you know, all that, you shed all that. And I've been watching a bunch of snake wrangling, so maybe a lot of snake metaphors. But, if you shed all that down, our real agency, for me, my real agency is exercised and provided to me through my creator. My creator defines my strength. He made me. He created me. You know, I can't sit here and contemplate on how fast I'll go, how strong I'll be, how loud I'll talk. If I can, I can guess, I can give it my best shot. But my creator knows. He made me. He knows how he designed me, and his word says he designed me perfectly in his image. So I exercised my agency. He defined me and gave me agency in this world. Agency to accept and to know him and to be committed to him. That is of my own free will. And for for these worldly entities to operate in such a way to where like you're violating my religious freedom. You're not my God said you were created to speak, not to be silenced. My God says I'm the one who created you to see, not to turn away and be blind. You know, and it's weird that I'm about to say this. Granted, it will, but I'll say it. It's like there's a part in Carl's diaries, video diaries in his diaries, where they show the baptism of his daughter and like how all out they went for the baptism of his daughter. Mind you, this is like the wealthiest crime family, and Carl, they're the most powerful crime family in the country. And here they are throwing this large baptism for his daughter. And that is how organized corporations work. They say you're only as strong as your weakest link. And that's why all these worldly agencies hire the people that they hire. That's why all these law enforcement agencies, they hire what they hire. And, you know, I feel that with all this evil and wickedness, that is where complacency falls in. It's it's uncomfortable when you're constantly adapting to your purpose over and over and over and over again. Because when you are living your purpose, that's exactly what you're doing. You're living. You're not rotting away, and you're not complacent in rot. You're moving. You're living. And I feel that when I was in this powerful corporation that in a godly way people showed me in a place where there wasn't any room for God, but they showed me that what God can do using an individual like me. And I don't think that for me, I think I understand it now way better than I did then. But I don't think that for me, it was connecting because my only connection to the world was through vehicles. That's what I loved beyond anything. That I didn't see that God loved me beyond anything. You know, I designed cars, He designed me. And I didn't want to shake free or shake loose. I basically became part of the car. Like if I could be fused with the car, I would. And I just don't remember my hands ever being off the car. I think I had some kind of attachment issues. I was like always having my hands on the car. it makes me kind of like, it just puts me in this place when I think about it. Like, I just lose my words, you know. I miss having my hands with or without gloves. I miss having my hands on panels of each of those cars, like just touching the panels, hearing the squeak, you know, making sure I gently latched the hood, the front of the car down, and, you know, sliding my finger on the back if there was carbon fiber on the back, if there's a spoiler on the car or not. You know, putting the fishing line straight through to remove a carbon fiber spoiler, put another one on. It's just things like that that I miss. But now I see that God has, you know, moved me past all of that. And I feel that while in that corporation, there were people that knew the reality of what I was facing, what I would face, and what was yet to come. Was me losing my life in the plans? No. And but God was in all of that. And even though now, like I saw on LinkedIn, I blocked the FBI page, tried to at least, but I saw on LinkedIn it said like 3 or 4 people. At one point, I said four, now it says three are now employed there. And I was just thinking to myself that, you know, I was thinking to myself that like how people gave me a chance, and now how these people are now maybe a part of that agency, and it's like almost like I like to say it's boomeranging around. Like now these people are going to make a difference in the world and showing these agencies what happens when you, I guess if you can say, you circumvent, or when you prevent, and when you try to eliminate certain aspects of a human identity in that workforce or in that structure, things fail. You know, there's no success. And I can say, you know, that I have every right to gloat if I want to gloat at this point, because I see in every way, shape, and form how certain people set me up for success beyond these moments. And I see that that's very upsetting to a lot of people, and I don't care, it's not my problem. But I'd be pissed too if I think about it. I'd be like, who's this little twerp that just came out of nowhere? Well, coach, do you know who my boss was? Do you know that he kind of came out of nowhere too? And if you think that if he, as messed up and twisted as he may be, if you think that he doesn't spread that message to not do exactly what all these federal agencies continue to do, limit people on what their capacities are, then I think that my entire case and situation really showed everybody the hard way. You know, I always did things by the book, and I had to like let go. I had to let go, and I learned to think celestial. And then I said, I don't think celestial, I know celestial now. I know my creator, and I know that my creator doesn't limit me, doesn't tell me what I can or cannot create, and what I can or cannot formulate. So it doesn't take much to understand love. It really doesn't take much. If you are capable of loving and being loved, but I think to receive that love from God, you don't have to be open to it, because He's going to love us no matter what. If we close ourselves off from Him, if we open ourselves off up to Him, it doesn't matter. He's going to continue to love us through it. And people are not the same. People, we're in the world, and God says He's not of it. So with people, it is different. And I just feel that all I can do is lead in my life and take care of myself, and that's what I'm about to do, is to continue to take care of myself. I don't have any vendetta out for anybody. I'm just trying to start my own life, live my own life past this, but I just stay positive, and if I want to call the FBI, I'm going to call them. They're not going to tell me otherwise. You know, if I want to call whoever I want to call, my sister from church, Jenny, she said Jesus always on the main line. God will not fail me, and people will, and these entities and stuff like that, they will, and they have. So, like, I don't sit here and I don't demand respect, but I feel that, you know, people need to start waking up. Like I told this one lady, she comes from the VA. She was kind of frazzled. And I said, you should have looked at my record and my chart before you called me. Like, you should be well prepared. Imagine if I show up to somebody's house, their wheels falling off, and I don't know what the hell I'm there for. So why do these people call me? You know what I mean? Why do these people hang up on me off the bat when they don't even know what the hell I'm calling for? You know what I mean? Somebody could have told me they're going all the way off the grid. They're just gonna commit to it. You know what I mean? And these people just hang up on me. So I said and did what I did. Hey, I could have easily gone YouTube Live and exposed these people, but I'm not coming from that type of place. And at this point, I really should. And I've really started to. And I don't have any tolerance for this stuff anymore. We're in 2026. I do not believe that if I do research right now and see how many calls on average they get in a year, you know, I don't believe that the maths. You know, I wonder how many times all these A-list celebrities have called, and I wonder how many times, it's a violation of the law. And this may be the way they've been doing things forever, but it's not going to be the way that they're going to be doing things now. I'll tell you that. Now with me, I called the White House, and the receptionist answered and told me to send all the documents to Donald Trump. You can't make that unhappen. It already happened. You know, I could sit here and go live about so many things in my life, and the reality is I probably will. But things are, I'm in control. Like, things are, I feel I want to let them out. You know, there are times where I'm like, maybe I shouldn't talk about these things because I'm still going through them, and I don't want to mess up anything in my life. But at this point, what's the point? You know, I wonder, like, what is it to the FBI that a 30-year-old kid like me, 30 to 34 now, I'm about to be 35, what is it that's so catastrophic about me? because I guarantee you there's nothing. I have only ever just tried to get myself help. Are things a lot better now? Yes. Yesterday the police actually were around. Today the fire department was around. We're starting to get things right. My thing is, if you don't want me to talk to you, pester you, bother you, then do what you're supposed to be doing, making me safe, my family safe, making everybody feel safe. Because hanging up on the phone on me and telling me this BS about you've told me this, you told me that. How about you start telling people leave me the fuck alone, stop threatening me? How about you start telling people that? How about you start telling Tessa why this woman in the workplace slammed the car door in my face? Why she could have almost killed me one morning. She was so pissed off. Why all these vehicles were banged up, smashed up, why they put me in that type of car and nearly ended my life. How about you start telling them and asking them those types of things? They won't. They won't do it. I'm sure they showed up and over there all Elon fanboys like everybody else. But I just take everything to God and say, God, I know that you will not fail me. I know you have not failed me. I know everybody, you know, that is human and of the flesh. All we have is one soul, and well, you think I have more than one me because I came back, but I see through Sam, I see through the other Sam, I see through these people, I see through all these people, you know what I mean? But what can I do? I can't do anything. But I can tell you this, that even though I see through all of them and they just play a role, play a part, they get paid, and so look at look at the reality. Here's a young man that has not been paid since 2022 to almost 2027. So for almost 5 years, I have not been paid outside of my VA check. And even then, the reality is that that check is not a manageable. There's no way one person can live off that check. There is absolutely no way. And I have managed to make a way. God, more importantly, has managed to make a way. So, and in those 5 years, he's interacted with everybody around him in his ecosystem, with the exception of Mr. Earl. Everybody in his ecosystem, outside his ecosystem, inside his ecosystem, have been paid. They have jobs, they've been paid, they are being paid to investigate his situation. People in the workplace are still getting paid to check on him. Everybody's getting paid except for me for the past 5 years. Explain that. So the reality by fact is that I'm the only person within the past 5 years that has not been bribed, I have not been paid, and I have not been corrupted or tainted. That is by fact. Nobody within the past 5 years has bribed me, paid me, coerced me, or tainted me. And that is the most that I can say about me, and I can't even say that for you. Can you say that about yourself? Nope, because I guarantee somebody's paid you. You've been paid, tainted, corrupted to interact with me in some way, shape, or form. I haven't. I haven't been paid to talk to you. To talk to you, I haven't gotten anything out of talking to you or anybody or anything like that. See, mic drop.